Ben, something that came up after last week's show, which became a relevant point, which is probably something I've been trying to say for the last 11 shows, is that your values are about tactility. But I don't think you got a correct understanding, perception of tactility. You talk about it in your book, which shows you understand and have a value orientation, to the degree you could have one, towards tactility. And I'm going to read some quotes. But the point of this is to show that when I met you last year, it flipped you into a more oral component on your show. A little more sound effects or something. Isn't that correct? It was some kind of change like that, right? Not so literary, even though you do read quotes, but more sound. Do you agree with that point? The change that happened a year ago?
I think you're supplying me with theoretical ideas to understand my change. I credit my change and my being thrown into orality more to having children, because everybody has to sing to their children. Everybody has to become a performer to their children. Previously, I'd conceived myself as a critic, a dry person who watches the other people doing what they do, and then I comment on it and analyse it. And I think it's really having children which pushed me towards orality. But I think you maybe supplied me with some of the ideas to think about that transition.
Right, and I can tell from our conversation so far that we're on the same page about tactility, but you just don't know my language about it. So I want to read some quotes in your books to show you what I mean by tactility, and then show you that's what you mean too.
Well, tactility is the grand panjandrum duende poodle ludicrousness of the McLuhanite system, because it's the big word you keep saying and you never quite can pin it down. It's like it means everything and nothing, and it's there, and it's your body, and it's everything, and it's quadraphenic, and it's quintophenic, and it's all the numbers you can think of. It's infinite, and it's real, and it's sort of, and it's always the word you throw up, but then you say it with such conviction and such joy that it's become a word in the house where we go, tactility. And we always love it, even though we don't know what the hell it is. You know what I mean? Anyway, anything more about tactility is great, especially if I said it ages ago without knowing it. So carry on, please.
Yes, I'm going to show you how you did talk about it and have talked about it. It's perfect what you just said now, because I'm going to point out what you just said now is what you write. This is on page 280 of the classic part 2 of the life of Frank Zappa, called Art, Class, and Cleavage.
I do try and be consistent, and this book you're talking about, you call part 2 of Frank Zappa, is actually the book I managed to publish after having some success by talking about a commercial entity called Frank Zappa, in which I thought I was expressing myself, but you argue that it's merely part 2 of a book on Frank Zappa, which is quite an interesting way of thinking about it, but I'll just keep quiet a moment and let you do what you're doing.
Yes, because you show in your Negative Dialectics book that Zappa is a tactile musician. All right, so here's the thesis behind it, page 280, Art, Class, and Cleavage. Middle of the page, print forces the reader to collude with its codes. : the concrete utterance invites instant judgment vis-a-vis world history. Then you write, the extraordinary impact of the voice in blues and rap results from the history of exploitation embedded in the black oral tradition. In brackets, only once this fact has been acknowledged, only once this fact has been acknowledged can Sufferation's transmutation in lounge jazz song and its take-up in country, punk, and rye be understood and traced, end of bracket. The possibility of a, quote, communication without codes, unquote, which inspired Kandinsky and Mondrian, Varese and Joyce, has been achieved in pop music, where timbre, T-I-M-B-R-E, italicized, vocal attitude, sartorial stance, and behavioral gesture have reached a dialogue. This is so tactile, Ben. Have reached a dialogue which is underway in nuanced regurgitation of its material signs in every part of the globe. Sounds a little pomo to me there, but anyways. that is also bound up with capitalist relations of production and consumption.
Ah, this is my anti-tactile moment. This is my moment of analysis. This is my moment where I am not merely a confused McLuhan enthusing about the modern world on some TV show and my hair all going awry. This is the moment at which I load in real analysis and real thought and challenge everybody. You see, Bob, it's dialectical. I use the tactile, or what you mean by tactile is sounding like Marshall McLuhan, who was a confused fool. He was the biggest imbecile of the 20th century, according to Guy Debord. And those moments you like, but I have another moment. I accept that I am like Marshall McLuhan in acknowledging these things about the modern world, but I have another moment. You see, the second part of my sentence is criticising. That's the thing that you've got to get through to for you to become a real member of the Exemplasm and another negative dialectician.
That's exactly the tactile point. If you
you mean I'm you? I'm part of the system, even though I can't. I'm trying to get my way out of the system, and it's so sticky that I'm still in the system. Is that what you're saying to me?
Yes, the interplay of eye-ear. The interplay of eye-ear. Eye is the capitalist, ear is the black music. The interplay is tactility. And you've got tactility right in this paragraph by the structure. The very fact you flip into the critical point is within the tactile dialectic. So let me finish the sentence. I don't even know if it makes any sense. It says that it is also bound up with capitalist relations of production and consumption only makes comprehension, use, and criticism of these codes by revolutionaries still more urgent. Now, do you mean the codes that are communications without codes, or the literary codes? What does that last sentence word codes refer to?
This is the bit that you find hard to understand. I
understand it, but I just say that to get you to say something. This is a tactile interplay.
Well, you're just poking me like a bear in the pit, raw.
That's right. Exactly. It's a tactile stick.
I was trying to explain something to you, Bob. Come on, I mean, be a bit nicer to me. I'm not sure I can respond to just goading.
My God, you're the one who told me to go at you before the show, and now I'm doing it. Ben wimps out.
All right, I'm not wimping out. I'm assessing who I'm talking to and how this is.
Yeah, who the hell am I talking to? Yeah,
going to proceed.
Clarify the codes and the criticism of these codes.
The idea of a communication without codes is a heretical, deviant and suppressed philosophy of everyday life, which is actually how everybody lives. The people who analyze and create intellectual systems to understand the world, in the main, and there are honourable exceptions to that, and I would cite Freud and Marx as honourable exceptions to the usual oppression of the concept, that the idea that mastering the codes everybody understands, it's money. Money is a code. That I'm against the codes that explain our lives, and I'm for the real life that manages to survive against the codes. Now, there are many paradoxes involved when you try and push this argument through, because people say, well, what I'm saying now is a code, but it's not. It's what I actually want and believe in is the everyday life of ordinary people reaching a point of consciousness where it can overthrow this oppression we're under, which is the code of money. And that's what we need to overthrow. That is actually the revolution that on these shows, Bob, you keep talking about. It's overthrowing money. But I feel you don't understand that, because sometimes you say things like, well, it's all been done. It's all there. It's all happened. But I don't think it has happened. Do you think it's happened?
Well, yeah. 40 years ago, McLuhan called money, and understanding media, the poor man's credit card. Now, we're talking technically about money, what money is, but you're talking about a meme of ownership and legacy that the Gutenberg Galaxy gave us, and the electric environment has overthrown that. We're now seeing it on Wall Street. But what it means for historical memes and future memes is what we're wrestling with here. So
well, there's the memes and anti-memes, but it seems to me that we're in a classic capitalist depression. I don't see why the electronic versus the previous, whatever it was, has really changed anything. I mean, we got a rise of fascism in this country after the European elections. It seems to me we got the same usual fight, is happening again. So I want to understand why the McLuhanite perceptions about these great epochal changes between media really have anything to contribute, because the way I see it, Barry, is it's the return of the old show. I don't really understand why we're in such a different situation from the 1930s. I don't, that the capitalist economy goes up and down. The rich people blame the poor people and say we've got to restrict this and restrict that, and you must do that and this, and they introduce fascism as the big stamp to really beat everybody back into the perpetuation of the capitalist system. Now, the arguments I'm saying, do they just sound to you like the boring old left-wing arguments that you're too philosophically advanced to go back to, or aren't they actually true?
First, I know why you called me Barry. I appreciate that. We're only for the money. This should be a dynamite show, Barry. Or were you making a mistake? I didn't even know you called me Barry.
Oh, that's the beginning of Lumpy Gravy. It's an allusion to, I assume that we are arguing about the ideas of Karl Marx and Marshall McLuhan over the oeuvre of Frank Zappa. So I'm going to quote Frank Zappa whenever I like. And the opening of Lumpy Gravy is, the way I see it, Barry, this is going to be a dynamite show. Excuse me, Bob, I'm shocked that you should even point that out. I mean, these are things that we should throw at each other and go without mention.
Well, that's what we're trying to educate Ian Patterson and these people. Do they know that? I mean, I just want them to know why you called me Barry. I know why, yeah.
Well,
do we have the insider intuition happening?
Well, I'm very glad you mentioned Ian Patterson, because I gave you his contact and you went up to see him in Cambridge, and he's a Cambridge poet and an important person.
He's never been the same since I got there.
And he's an important person now within Cambridge University. I'll probably get this wrong because I can never remember these details because I'm not an academic, and but he's director of studies. I can just hear Esther, who is an academic, correcting me, but she's not listening. At some college anyway in Cambridge, he's a director of studies, having spent his life not being an academic and in fact dealing books and being a poet. But now, this is weird because we're talking about something. This program will be. I'm always aware that we're broadcasting this. Are you, Bob? Are you aware that when we're talking, this is going to become a show that other people will listen to?
Exactly. That's why I explained Barry, because there's lots of people who won't know what it refers to, and it's an inside joke.
Yeah. Okay, good. But I'm aware of that because I'm thinking about the fact that I do a show today, and I read out an entire pamphlet of poetry by Ian Patterson, who you've just mentioned, on my show. And suddenly you come back with Ian Patterson, and I'm thinking, synchronicity. But it's not synchronicity. It's called a culture. It's where you worry about the same things, and the same things come round and round. But I'm glad you mentioned Ian Patterson because, I was reading his poetry today. Out loud on the radio.
New poetry written after I met him?
Yes.
All right, I want to see how I affected him.
Well, are you interested? Because one of the discussions that we seem to have offline and we don't often air in this public forum, which is our Bob and Ben show, is the standoff between my defense of a literary avant-garde in a quite restricted way. I mean, it's not like I believe in the avant-garde and huge amounts of publications, but I do believe in a few people writing poetry. They call it poetry. I call it writings in books, which I think without that you have no angle with which to analyze the mass culture industry. I believe the avant-garde still exists, and sometimes with things you say, no, the avant-garde's all dissolved, it's all happened, that's last year's thing, everybody's into sports.
No, I am the avant-garde, and I just say that I'm not recognized by the traditional obsolete avant-garde.
Okay, Bob, you are the avant-garde. That's fine. I want to include you in, but I want to get you in touch with these other people who may be writing things that get printed on paper, but I think our communications that you, someone of your stature, should be involved in. That's why I sent you to talk to Ian Patterson in Cambridge. Do you see what I mean?
Yes, and he did not. He's on my mailing list. I think I send him stuff. You might see pictures of my Maui paradise or something. You have to check, but he doesn't respond. I mean, these guys just shut down. I opened a dialogue with them, and nothing. I haven't heard anything back from them. I try to keep it going.
But that's because you are carrying on no, but you're carrying on a networking basis, and I can't speak for Ian. I don't know what he's expecting. I mean, it's ridiculous to speak with him.
On the phone if you had time. These guys, they have jobs. They don't have time for anything. They got to write their next book.
All right.
I mean, I have not read the book that he mentioned. It's a good book, sounding book. Can't remember what it was. A recent one he just put out. Very interesting. It was McLuhan-esque from my point of view. He was developing Wyndham Lewis figure ground studies on the 20s and 30s or something. And I would like to have time to read it. And he doesn't have time to talk to me about it, and I haven't got time to read it, and he's got no time because he's got to write his next book. See?
So all these people don't have time to talk to each other, but that's the problem, isn't it? Because what the ideal situation is, the idea of organisation and bliss, is to get all the people that have said anything significant to you into a room together. I mean, I used to have fantasies of kidnapping various older people who'd really affected me, and I wanted to put them down. I wanted to kidnap them and put them down in a cellar. You know, I'd really go and wrench them away from their normal routines, and with people would take them and blindfold them and tie them up and take them in a van and take them down to a cellar and then let them go in the cellar and then see what they'd say to each other. You know, did you ever have a fantasy like that?
That is all that I've done, Ben. If you go back and listen to my timeline, go back to 1984, I constantly juxtaposed, since I couldn't get them in the same room. One of them was dead.
So you couldn't do it via kidnapping? Yeah.
Ben, listen, I replayed their dialogue for the last 25 years, and that's a dialogue between Marshall McLuhan, Frank Zappa, Lyndon LaRouche, William Aaron Thompson, Arthur Croker, John Baudrillard, Dr. Beater, Mae Brussel, a whole cosmic awareness, and I've replayed this stuff and presented a conversation among them that was not possible otherwise. And that's what I do, Ben.
But that's what we all do if we think, isn't it? That when Stuart Home, he wrote a novel in which a character who is a head-bangingly materialist character meets some other character, and the other character is talking about spirits. He drags him and takes him into a bookshop, and he points at books by poets who are long dead and said, that is a spirit. You can communicate with this dead person. It's called a book that they wrote. You can pull this book off the bookshelf. You can relate to them. And I feel like Stuart Home was making the same point you're making.
It's exactly, and I can quote you chapter and verse where McLuhan makes the same point back in the 50s. And Hugh Kenner elaborated on it. First of all, you're talking to spirits when you use speech because it contains all the perceptions and contributions of the people who made the language.
But really it does. You see, that's why I'm interested in speech.
And the book.
But this is my insistence on speech and poetry and actual music versus the people who talk about spirit. Because as soon as someone talks about spirit, they're talking about pulling the wool over your eyes.
That's right. I've always mentioned that the Akashic records are right here being created in the media daily. I've said that for 40 years. Now here's the thing. That McLuhan did the same thing. His books are dialogue between the five vortices and other people thrown in. Yes, you're right. We are all, any major thinker or proper understanding of the simultaneity of the tradition, the Menippean tradition, is aware of this ongoing dialogue.
So they're all arguing in our heads that we read all these books and they're very powerful vectors, and that we read somebody or we talk to somebody, hear somebody's argument. I mean, it could be alive or a book, and it doesn't really make much difference. If they affect you, they become a kind of vector, a force field in your head arguing this, and that when you think you've got all these ideas of these different people who are that you like and affect you, and yet they don't quite agree with each other. They're battling away in your head. Is that what thinking is?
Yes, and since we've extended our heads in the 20th century...
We've become bulbous. In fact, our heads have become so developed, we need to develop extremely long noses to accept the brain extensions which are coming down.
Yes, exactly. 2 points. First of all, I thought this should be a dynamite show. Barry begins at We're Only for Money, but you're sure it's lumpy gravy?
Of course. The lumpy gravy begins... The way I see it, Barry, this should be a real dynamite show.
Okay, I said We're Only for the Money, but lumpy gravy is phase 1 or phase 2 of We're Only for the Money, so they go together. Okay, anyway.
Your apology is a little bit wobbly these days, Bob, but I don't mind. It's so lovely talking to you.
I have not, I haven't done much on Zappa for a long time. But anyways, he is in my head. What's avant-garde about me? I say the dialogue between McLuhan, William Thompson, Croker, Baudrillard, LaRouche, Zappa, May Brussels has been externalized and acted out by the media. So you have the radio sensibility arguing with the TV sensibility, arguing with the computer sensibility, arguing with the satellite sensibility, and then the Android beam playing that off.
You're talking like Speed Freak. It's talking too fast, and you've not got the essential materialism I require of anyone I talk to, which is theorists don't create the world. The world, because that's anti-democratic, the world is actually people making all this stuff happen. They are, stuffing the fiber optic cables down under the pavements. They're the people creating the world. The theorists stumble afterwards trying to understand this thing that everybody's doing. So the idea that a few theorists and a few names you quote create a new world and then it follows behind is an idealist fantasy. It's a traditional fantasy that philosophers and intellectuals fall into, and it's really wrong, and we have to skewer that one.
It's amazing. Yes, I guess I did talk your best, because your lack of understanding is perverse. I was saying what you just said. I said the material environment of radio, TV, computer...
No, but it came first. It comes before the theory. The theory does not create all that. Yeah. I mean, theory can create things in terms of political action. You do need people who try and understand the world that everybody's creating to make us people who want to do something decide to do it right. Yeah, theory has a place if you want to act. But in terms of actuality, theory does not create the world. The world produces something which theory tries to understand.
You see how perverse you're being? I am not talking theory at all. I'm saying that
everything you say is theoretical, Bob. It's pure theory from Hawaii. It's all theory.
Computer.
Well, how come
this computer? Okay,
what?
Let me.
Let's rewind and let me give you a little bit of space. I'll just try and hang back a bit and listen to you.
Try to hang back. Try. The material conditions. Is that me blipping? I don't know. It's a blip. Okay, I guess it's... here we go. The Android mean is my term for the material conditions we live in.
You've got to explain the Android mean. Who understands the Android mean? There's things you say. Okay. The Android mean.
The Internet. The World Wide Web, the virtual matrix. What do you call this world that we're using Skype within? What do you want to call it? Capitalism? Okay, capitalism. All right. This is what capitalism is arguing about. Capitalism within itself is arguing radio sensibility versus TV sensibility versus book sensibility versus computer sensibility versus satellite sensibility.
No, you are asking people to go out from their material bodies to reconsider what they are being given by this international system of communications. You are asking people to look at it from their own perceptive apparatus. You are saying stand back from this stuff and have a look at it. That's really what you're saying.
No, I'm saying let's look at it as Ben Watson describes it. So I go to my next quote. We're trying to explain and propagate Ben Watson here to people. Page 150 of our class in cleavage. The top, it says, when Johnny Rotten published his autobiography in 1994, he called it Rotten, no Irish, no blacks, no dogs. Then Ben writes, canine negation surfaces wherever critique loosens the blindfold of affirmative kitsch and starts to descry the actual ruins. That's described, D-E-S-C-R-Y. The moist monist real is betrayed by the aridity of metaphysical definitions. As a way of describing the human essence, the polar choice, in quotes, beast or angel, obscures the interpenetrated actuality. That's tactility.
It's great. I always know it's got a hit with you when you say it's tactility. It's like you're sneezing or having an orgasm. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a positive allergy. Okay, the categorical mentality will never grasp the no-dog truth. Okay, the dog is the symbol for Menippean satire. The dog is a symbol for this philosophy of the cynics.
Yes, and have you read Peter Sloterdijk?
Yes, you quote him.
No, I liked him. I read him after I worked out all my ideas, and there's a guy in Holland, Peter Sloterdijk. He wrote in German. He wrote a book called Critique of Cynical Reason, and it exactly argues all the stuff I was trying to argue in a rather more coherent philosophical way. But then he went mad and became an orange person, as radical thinkers do. Radical thought needs to be rational and clear, but so often socially it puts you so beyond the margin that you're very liable to fall for kind of areas of nonsensical behavior. That happened to him.
Right. Now I juxtapose what I just read in a tactile manner with page 92 at the bottom, the Leathern Lady of Philosophy.
Oh, you're getting onto leather, baby. That's heavy.
Yep. Materialist aesthetics, which is the Ben Watson doctrine. Tactile.
I don't have a doctrine. How do you call me having a doctrine?
Tactile doctrine, which is non-doctrine.
Well, doctrine's just teaching. Everything's just teaching. We are teaching each other, teaching anybody who listens. We're teaching. Don't be frightened of doctrine, folks.
Okay. Materialist aesthetics seeks to extend the line of radical democratic materialism that stretches from Philo of Alexander to Joseph Deepskin, like a leathern bootlace. And then you...
I gotta laugh. Some of the things I wrote in the past are really funny. I feel like Homer Simpson looking at his old videos or something. Go ahead.
Yeah. 120, footnote 127. So there's a quote from Joseph Deepskin to illustrate your point. You say...
This'll be good. Listen up, folks. This is Bob talking, but he's quoting Joseph Deepskin. This is an important writer who used to be read by working classes. I found books by Joseph Deepskin in our local library, which is called the Working Men's College. In there were volumes by Joseph Deepskin. In the 1930s, this was popular reading. Karl Marx called him our best philosopher. He was the working man's philosopher. So listen to what Bob has to say.
Yeah, listen to his tactile doctrine. Here's Deepskin. Quote, the truth is neither above nor below, neither in Jerusalem nor in Jericho, neither in spirit nor in the flesh, but everywhere.
Hey! He's a plastic. I love that.
Yeah, that's tactility.
You mean it's tactility again? Tactility is going to eat the world. It's like some crab. It's like
part B.
It's like some clacking crab lobster thing that climbs up my leg and is going to bite everything and eat everything. Tactility will eat the world.
Thank you, Ben. That's exactly the point I'm leading to.
Is it? But where do you put... But you love systems. You're quite a medieval thinker. I find you a bit like Giordano Bruno. You like to make world pictures and you put this thing in one place and that thing in the other. So in your diagram of the universe, if tactility is everything, where do you put it, Bob, in your system?
Tactility is the central nervous system of our bodies. It was extended by the electric environment.
So, your tactility is what I call revolutionary humanism.
Ben, you are the son of the monster magnet. And the monster magnet that ate the world is electrified tactility.
By the way, folks, when Bob says monster magnet, he's referring to a famous track on Frank Zappa's first record. And Frank Zappa was talking about the tape recorder. He was talking about the ability to record, because all recording on tapes is to do with magnets, because it's magnets that align the iron filings to repeat the sounds that went into the microphone and into the tape recorder, in the same way that if you pour sand evenly over a table and then you shout at it, you'll find it makes a ripple in the sand. That's exactly the same principle that the tape recorder uses. So the monster magnet is this thing which controls what goes on the tape, or what goes on the iron filings. So by monster magnet, what we mean is the meaning stuff which makes ripples in the sand, which is this worrying stuff about who's in control and what means. And that is precisely what me and Bob want to talk about more, because we want to understand it, because we want to stop it doing the bad things it seems to do everywhere. Right, Bob?
Yes, I agree with everything you've said there, and it's delightful you mentioned me as the new Bruno, because the very next sentence you say, after quoting Dietzken, you say, Master Tanner Dietzken revived the heresy for which Giordano Bruno was burned at the stake.
Well, it's easy to find these coincidences, but actually, if you think about it, it's not really that great. It's just me revolving my own stuff, and you've got involved in my universe. I feel like a dreadful astronaut in a Philip K. Dick novel who's revolving around a dead planet, and the same ideas go round and round, and I think it's great, and it's all a great coincidence, and then I realise it's not. It's just me going round me in a kind of bad way. So, Bob, that I've hit a low in our show. We're halfway through, folks. You're listening to the Bob and Ben show. And this is what we do. We do these hours of conversation. We don't normally do this sort of check, do we? But I thought I would, because I was suddenly thinking about the other people, because I'm feeling so high, because you've been so flattering, Bob, which you aren't always. You're often quite kind of aggressive, hopefully. And anyway, we're halfway through. But are we thrown now? Is that it? Should we call it a day and a 31-minute show? Would that be a first? Or what's eating you? What do we want to do next?
Well, tactility is expressed by silence, so we're trying to be an anti-environment to the tactile, and I'm trying to wake Ben up to his bias towards the tactile, even though he thinks it's oral culture, and then move Ben into the position of critiquing tactility, which he is doing
without knowing it. I'm doing things without knowing it. I'm continually doing things without knowing it, but that's merely because I don't express what I do in your jargon.
Correct. So let me continue here with this quote, so we'll go with your jargon. Master Tanner Dietzken revived the heresy for which Giordano Bruno was burned at the stake, : his materialist pantheism, in brackets, Bruno also contributed to Finnegan's Wake's destruction of the hierarchical overview, end of bracket, end of sentence. So Dietzken revived the materialist pantheism of Bruno. Then Ben says leather workers deal with the perimeter.
Hang on. I think we should just explain to each other what we mean by pantheism. What do you understand by pantheism, Bob?
What he said, what Dietzken said when he
what do you understand by pantheism?
What Dietzken says here: the truth is neither above nor below, neither in Jerusalem nor in Jericho, neither in spirit nor in the flesh, but everywhere. That to me seems to be pantheist.
Yeah. I mean, I always hear pantheist in pantheism. I hear a knickers obsession. Yeah. What do you call them in the States? Underwear.
Yes, underwear. Yeah.
Pantheism for me, pantheism, and well, if God is everywhere, it could be in the attractive allure of smelly knickers of a attractive person that you're pursuing or would like to pursue. Don't you think?
Yes, no, I agree. There's nothing.
Well, you agree, but I mean, philosophy must put its roots down into sensual experience and the drives that we have. This is the argument of Freud and Marx, that we can't allow philosophy to float in these areas where anything's denied. So pantheism must be recognized, don't you think?
Exactly. That is, by definition, the Menippean tradition.
Now, you keep saying Menippean, but you haven't explained that to our listeners. Menippean, some new weird word.
Let's explain.
I mean, I only ever learned the word Menippean because I found a book by Milton Klonsky. I read this book about a Menippean paean to a flea, and I read this book and I realized that somebody else had written me before I was. And it shocked me to the core because he wrote exactly like I wrote, and myself existed in where do you call it? The Village. You know, where's the Village in New York? You know, that area?
Yeah,
that somebody, Greenwich Village, you know, somebody existed before me who was me, who was a hip, like, jazz groovester, hipper and groovier than I could be. I mean, you know, he was in the center of it and read everything and wrote this thing, and I realized that he was me more than I was. Have you had experiences like that, Bob, where you met somebody who was more you than really you were?
No, most people...
You went no, but you wanted to say yes, didn't you? But you couldn't think of anybody.
No. Yeah, well, it's like this. Most people think I'm them. I get told I'm that to them. It's like Zappa once said, who's going to make me laugh? I don't know if there's anybody I've met who was me before me. I don't think so.
No.
I think... Oh, okay, but...
But maybe that's because you don't push your stuff out enough as product. Because once you externalize what you do and you look at it objectively, it becomes a thing. The real one of the real oppressions of our current situation, and you always want us to get to where's the revolution, and one of the things we should talk about is the dissatisfaction of the particular life we're in. And one of them is that people don't have enough chance to externalize what they are and look at what they might do as an external object which they could compare with other objects produced by other people. Because once you do that, you can step away from the mere assertion of self, which is the usual competitive battle of bourgeois society and asserting against each other all the time. And you can look at a product that you did, like looking at a shit that you did in the toilet when you're young enough not to get upset about it and feel it's bad, and say that's a sausage, that is 2, that is 3, that is a squirty one, that is pointy at the ends. And the products that we make culturally should be treated like that, because if we could get that distance from it, we can look at it and then we can compare what other people do, and that gives us an objective freedom which allows you to navigate what culture is in a way that's friendly and benign and stops this competitive war that we all seem to be locked in. Do you think?
Oh, exactly. I think that's what we're doing here on our show.
Wow, yeah, we're pooping in public and looking at what comes out. I like that. Yeah. Okay. So,
I want to get back. You asked for a definition of Menippean tradition.
Good. That'll be a good poop. I
will quote you.
No, not me again. I mean, why can't you do it?
No. Well, I could do it, but this is how I'm doing it. I'm just you with me. I'm sharing your poo with my silken pillows. Okay. You have leather workers deal with, but I'm going to put in Menippeans deal with the perimeter between inner and outer, flesh and the inanimate. They restitch segments of previous integumental unities into usable commodities. There's you, Ben, telling us to externalize ourselves. They seem peculiarly aware of the connections between things. Like Coleridge, but unlike Gorky, the Menippeans saluted Bohm, B-O-H-M-E, Boma. I don't know how you say that. Jacob Bohm. Okay.
That's Jacob Burma. It's an
Booma,
O.
Booma.
It's an O. No, it's an O with an umlaut. So in.
That's what I said. Booma.
Burma.
Booma. Now we have Iris here. We can start going Booma, Baba.
No. I'm just trying to show you. You know, an umlaut. There's 2 dots above a letter, and it makes you wince your mouth while you say it. So Jacob Boehmer with an umlaut in it is Jacob Boehmer.
Right, got it. Okay, so the Menippean agrees with this. Quote, "The universe, with its absolute qualities, is closely akin to that infinite being of whom Jacob Boehmer, the celebrated philosophical shoemaker of Gorlitz, said," quote, this is Boehmer, "He is neither light nor darkness, neither love nor anger, but the eternal one." Then Ben says, if the entire...
Forget what Ben says. I mean, after that, who cares what Ben says? I mean, that's such a statement of angry exemplisticism. It's this dismissal of the divided way with this or that. And these are the ways in which rational dialectics gets compared to mysticism, because in this society, any thought of combining everything is dismissed as mysticism. But without this idea that everything could be together, you can't understand the material universe, because the material universe is everything together. Don't you think?
Right, it's codes. So now we come back...
It's not codes. It's no codes at all. The codes aren't part of the world. Codes are systems we use to understand things. But Bob, why do you have this structuralist knee-jerk response that you have to say it's codes? It's not codes, it's the moon draws the tides, there's the earth, there's the clouds, there's the atmosphere. Why is it codes? Codes are just systems we use to understand it. Why are codes supreme? Why is it all codes? I don't understand why you have to come back to codes.
Because I'm miming communication without codes by bringing up the topic of codes, which then puts you into a paroxysm of reaction, and we stand back and look at Ben and his allergies. That's what we're doing here. I'm doing what you requested us to do, to stand back and compare Ben's work with me or other people. So
that's your way of wriggling out the fact. That's your way of wriggling out the fact that you were philosophically incorrect at the moment when you said everything is codes.
Look, I'm including the materialist conditions of our communication as we argue content.
Of course. I mean, we do that all the time. There's no should. We do that because we find it amusing, because we are finding amusement as our way through politics and philosophy, which is quite rare.
Yes, that's what we're doing. So for our amusement, I want to reread page 280, the quote, so that it makes sense in comparison to all that we've talked since I read this quote 20 minutes ago.
But Bob, I love it when you kill me with my own fantastic lines.
That's right. This is Menippean, what I'm doing. This is actually Bob's version of Ben, disguised as Ben.
Ah,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the most... anyway, I forget talking about it. Get on with it, baby.
Okay, here we go. In light of what we have said over the last 25 minutes or so, this statement from Ben, page 280, from his book, should be revelatory. He says, print, which is the world of codes, print forces the reader to collude with its codes. That means that there are codes, but print forces us to collude with them. It locks us inside the cage of capitalism. All right, print forces the reader to collude.
No, it doesn't. Your gloss is completely wrong. Capitalism is totally outside print. Capitalism is a principle of, I wake up in the morning, how am I going to live? I have to go work for somebody. It's nothing to do with codes of print. This is a McLuhan idealism. The medium that you have is not all important. The all important thing is when we wake up in the morning, how are we going to live? How are we going to flourish? How are we going to breed our like? That's the important stuff.
You walked through, because when you get up in the morning and you say, I got to go to work, where do you go to find the jobs? Up to recently, you go to the printed newspaper and look at the classifieds for ads, for what? For help.
No, Bob, we use any medium we have to do what we need to do. I'm talking about what is the initial impulse. And I'm saying that print or computers or, are not the overriding, over-important thing. That your McLuhanite obsession with the particular media is superficial. That the actual situation of people is better understood by understanding their relation to the means of production, how the society reproduces itself. That is a more profound thing. That Karl Marx is more profound than Marshall McLuhan. McLuhan notices lots of things, and there's a whole area of Marxism that is got dead because it's not alert to the stuff McLuhan knows about, because McLuhan was plugged into the Avant-Garde, and the Avant-Garde in art is important, and because it comes back to subjective experience about the eye and the ear and how do we get this stuff. Now, when you're on that end of McLuhan, I'm really in favour of what you say. But in turning it into a complete philosophy, you lose the grounding that has to happen in real, actually how history's evolved and what society really is. You know, I lose patience with you because I don't, you know, I can't believe you anymore in your sort of fervid extrapolations from McLuhan, because you know there is a real basis to society. There is something there which you can't change just by going eye, ear, you know, all this sort of brilliant juggling with concepts. You know that there is, you know, it's not going to go away. You know, when I wake up the next day having thought all this stuff, it's still there. I mean, you're laughing. But you can laugh because you're a rich, retired American in Hawaii. It's all funny.
I am not. I'm leading edge of the revolution. And now listen to this. Do you support the students in Iran right now, or whoever's
I haven't been following
the election results?
I haven't been following that. I'm sorry.
Here's the revolution right in progress. Now, Ben, I haven't been following that. How do you follow things, Ben? Through media.
Of course. I'm not denying the mediations. Insisting on the mediations versus the understanding is stupid. We shouldn't be having this row. I mean, there is no concentration on all these things that are required to understand anything, and it's just a matter of emphasis that we've got on the wrong foot.
I am trying to deal with what you wrote, Ben, and what you declared to the public in your revolutionary fervor. We're still trying to figure out what would you like to do in this revolution, other than what we're doing now, which is so revolutionary. It's on the radio. You know, I mean, you have to be revolutionary to be on Resonance FM. So we qualify. How are we doing? How's our revolution doing? Well, we haven't actually been on yet. Didn't start till July. But what in the heck are you? You're just complaining about you have to go to work. What are you doing about it? Now, I know all that you've done about it, Ben, but what are you doing now, today? How's that working for you?
Well, the point I want to make is an imagination about what...
I just had to burst up laughing. I'm just thinking, if Karl Marx heard Ben's show out to lunch, there is Ben on with his daughter, tactilized, making little drumming sounds and mouth noises. Yeah, Marx would say, yeah, Ben, this is what I meant. Now, I'm not disagreeing with you, but let's look at what you're doing, Ben.
What I'm doing is thinking about philosophy, thinking and judging philosophy and the entire realm of culture by where I'm at. Okay?
Yes.
Now, where I'm at is, why am I not having any fun? Why are things bad? What do I have to do?
What do you mean you're not having any fun? You get on the radio and get to, quote, masturbate, you know, and just express yourself. Now, I'm probably the only person I see listens attentively to your show, follows the obscure stuff. Who's the guy from the 30s? Great writer. Richard, what was that guy you discovered? You played a few weeks ago.
Jean-Richard Bloch.
Yeah, no, that was very interesting. But you cannot follow exactly what he's saying as you're listening. You can enjoy the massage, but I would rather read than I could get exactly. But I'm trying to listen. I don't know if Paul Manott or Evil Dick or the other Paul and Marge and Michael Tenzer, are they listening as attentively to your show as I am? And
well, no, probably not. It's very interesting, Bob, for you to pick up on all these little fragments of the show that I do. But I do think that for a proper, because we're nearing the end of our discussion now, and we've entered into the dark waters of politics, that I need to orient at least myself and probably listeners too about where I stand on this whole blooming thing. Right? Like, we want the revolution. I've got this laughing jackass that I'm talking to, who's a retired CIA guy sitting in Hawaii who goes swimming with turtles every day, and I've been made fun of. And here's me thinking, well, what am I going to conclude with? Where's the great ringing conclusion? Except to say that we've got at least 5 minutes, Bob. And what I want to say, well, you got something to say. I thought it was my role now to wrap things up and give everything a nice conclusion. Well, I've got to keep quiet and let you go. But you had nothing to say. You were purely shrapnel, man. You're just destructive, hostile, nasty, boring.
I'm trying to get on board with you. I'm at the leading edge, and you're part of the leading edge, and we're trying to get coordinated. You complain, but what are we going to do? And of course, we're doing it. But what else can we do, Ben?
We could begin by understanding where we're at. And I think beginning by when I wake up in the morning, do I have to go to work or not go to work, or what do I have to do, is a pretty good beginning to understanding where we're at. If we're talking about anybody's listening, what are you doing? Most radio that I listen to is early in the morning. Esther puts it on. I don't like her putting it on. Is people waking everybody up to go to work. Then I'm thinking, why are they all going to work? Why are we all going to work? Why is radio all about waking people up to go to work? Maybe we don't want to go to work. Maybe we'd like to do something else. Now, when you introduce those questions, you introduce social questions, which are revolutionary questions, the real questions about what is everybody doing and why are we doing it.
Well, that's what I'm explaining.
Are you getting to that, Bob, or not? Because I'll carry on these hours for you forever if you are a revolutionary. But when you stop being a revolutionary, I'm not going to talk to you anymore, Bob.
I'm a revolutionary, and I'm part of it because I don't go to work.
Well, or are you just some?
But
you're not.
Why is Esther going to work?
You are not going to work, but are you not going to work just because you're retired?
No.
Where is the basis of your?
I've never worked.
Never ever.
Never ever. I've had assignments.
This is beautiful, man. It's like Paris.
I never had to do the same thing every day.
You're an absolute bohemian refusenik.
Yeah.
Jamais travailler, as Guy Debord sprayed up once on a wall in Paris.
For your revolution.
Yeah, but, work is like... most people have to work. It's the only way to carry on.
Yeah, and I'm trying to help them, loosen them, as Frank said.
Yeah, well, that's true, but you can't go along to people who need to work. This broaches big questions. I'm looking at the time. We're not going to have time to deal with all this work and the bohemian and, my position on it is I totally support the bohemian refusal to work, but I also understand all the people that are doing work because they want to do what they need to do. I have sympathy for them. I'm not against the working class. The fusion of the bohemian with the working class is revolution. If we could solve that problem, that difference, that is revolution. That's what happens in revolutions. That's why I'm a revolutionary.
Me too, and I have led the revolution as a bohemian refusing and come into a very powerful position, which is ironic. And I'm helping to liberate the working class behind the scenes, and you can hear all that on every Wednesday on Cashflow. But
give them the URL because we don't know anything about Cashflow.
Oh, it's achieveradio.com Wednesdays at noon hour California time. Achieveradio.com. You just click on it and listen live.
Good.
The show is called Cashflow, but I don't want to. But I'm trying to do that here in England with you.
Well. We're all trying to do it, baby, I want to kiss you for some strange reason, but I can't. It's just a computer screen, and we've only got 45 seconds left.
Let me read the quote to wrap it up. Print forces the reader to collude with its codes. The concrete utterance invites instant judgment vis-a-vis world history. The extraordinary impact of the voice in blues and rap results from the history of exploitation embedded in the black oral tradition. Only once this fact has been acknowledged can suffration's transmutation in lounge jazz song and its take-up in country, punk, and ride be understood and traced. The possibility of a communication without codes, which inspired Kandinsky and Mondrian, Perez and Joyce, has been achieved in pop music, which Ben doesn't like anymore and is rather upset about, where timbre, vocal attitude, sartorial stance, behavioral gesture have reached a dialogue which is underway in nuanced regurgitation of its material science in every part of the globe. That it is also bound up with capitalist relations of production and consumption and refusing to work only makes comprehension, use, and criticism of these codes very relevant on Resonance FM. And by